Welcome to Two Roads Crossing, a podcast production of the Christian Veterinary Mission. Do you wonder how your faith fits together with your profession? Well, join us as we explore how to live well at the intersection of two roads crossing.
Well, hello and welcome to Two Roads Crossing. If this is your first time joining us on the podcast, welcome. My name is Barry Schwank. I'm a veterinarian, a pastor, and your host as we explore the intersection of faith and veterinary medicine. If this is not your first time joining us, my name is still Barry Schwank, and I'm still a vet. That's a bad joke. I'm sorry. I shouldn't start off that way. I apologize. But it's great to have you here. It's great to have you continue to support this podcast. As always, for everyone listening, if you have any recommendations, if you have any questions, if you have any topics or even speaker suggestions, feel free to contact us at podcast@cvm.org. We'd love to hear from you, or even just to give us a little bit of feedback of how you've been enjoying or utilizing these podcasts. Today, I want to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, which is that transition from being in school to being in the workforce. For those aspiring young veterinarians, that transition from school to the workforce can be both exhilarating and exciting, but also terrifying. And there are some things that you can do as you enter into that transition to maybe give yourself a little bit of an edge, maybe to help you be a little bit more successful in that first position that you take as a doctor. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Ginger Pelc, a 2017 grad from North Carolina State University, and a decade-long CVM short-term participant, as well as now team leader and all sorts of other good stuff. Ginger, I appreciate you taking time to join us today. How are you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, but it's your day off, and so I am just this is a servant's heart right here, willing to join on that very tiny amount of time that you have off. I really appreciate you joining us today to talk about how to be successful into entering the workforce. How was that process for you as a student going into your first clinical experience? Were you excited, terrified? Did you have good mentoring and coaching, or how was that transition for you?
Yeah, so it was something that was very exciting to me. I can tell you, the longer I was in school, the less I enjoyed being in school. So I was very excited to finally have the opportunity to get out and kind of start to put to practice everything that I had been taught and learned. I did feel like I had, good mentoring in that process. Just other veterinarians, particularly CVM veterinarians, were also very helpful, as I was kind of talking through what I was looking for. And I also had a little bit of an idea of kind of what I was interested in, which was helpful. Having the support is really good. And it was also something that took a lot of prayer, that entire fourth year, just looking for God's leading, as to where he wanted to place me. And the important thing to know is that he will use you wherever you are. But keep looking to him for guidance, as you try and figure it out. So
it's funny how our prayers change, right? There's a time where we're praying to get into vet school, and then we're praying to survive vet school, and then we're praying to get out of vet school. So thankfully, God's faithful every step of the way. Well, I really that transition can be hard because in many ways, as veterinarians, we get prepared for a lot of things, but transitioning into the workforce may be something that is rather foreign to us, or we may not fully understand how to go into it. And especially as Christian veterinarians, if you're looking for a specific a place where you can feel like you are meeting people's needs and being able to serve in a way that is beneficial for you and a practice, it takes a lot of effort. And so I'd love to hear some of your recommendations. I know that you talk with a lot of students about this. When you're talking with them, what are some of the things that you recommend for them to do or to consider as they go into this job hunt phase?
Yeah. So the first thing that I think is really important is to have established some non-negotiables. So what are the things that are most important to you as you get out of school that you know that you need to be happy doing what you're doing. For me, first thing, knowing that I enjoy doing missions, I wanted a practice that allowed me to do missions year round. It was actually something where I asked, if I could have enough vacation time to be able to do that. And I honestly thought that would lead me to a Christian practice, and funny thing, it did not. But it has worked out very well that way. And that's just, once again, a neat way to kind of see where God is leading, because it doesn't always end up being what you think it might be. Other thing, I was from North Carolina, so I didn't enjoy working in the heat, so I wanted a colder climate. So that was something that was very important to me, and I absolutely love snow. So I now work in the snow belt. And my first Christmas here, we got 6 feet in 36 hours, and I was a happy camper. So that was something that was important to me. Starting my 4th year, I thought I wanted all large animal. I knew that I wanted to do cattle, predominantly dairy cattle, but I did do some job interviews that were only beef. And as the year kind of went on doing job interviews, I realized that was not fulfilling for me, that I really wanted the dairy side of things, and the weekly palpations, and nutrition and DA surgeries and all of that, which I wouldn't get on the beef side of things. So that kind of helped me to pinpoint a little bit more of what I was looking for. And then I realized that I was asking practices to let me continue doing missions, of which 50% of that is small animals. So I all of a sudden realized that I should probably be looking at a mixed animal practice instead of a large animal predominant, because I wanted to make sure that my medicine and surgery skills were up to par no matter where I was, and that I'd be providing the best service wherever I went. So that's something that kind of changed as my 4th year went on, and I kept looking for jobs. And then another thing that was really important to me was also establishing a budget. So that way I knew what my student loans were. I knew what my monthly payments were going to be and how quickly I wanted to pay my loans off. And so I sat down and established cost of living for, different places that I had applied for jobs. I, put in those budget requirements of paying loans off and what I needed to, live and grow and be okay on my own. And so that helped me to also establish different places that I was looking at. And I would encourage you, don't hesitate from asking practices how much they're offering. Because I found the ones that didn't offer that upfront were offering something that was way too low. So it's okay to ask that upfront, because it's something that's very important for you to be able to grow and thrive outside of school. And then the last thing for me, which I didn't realize was going to be a non-negotiable, but I figured it out in my first year of practice, was I get to work with reindeer. And so that's something that's really exciting to me and I enjoy. And we honestly get to see a whole bunch of different species, which for me is a lot of fun, because I get bored if I do the same thing over and over again. So that was something that I learned going through my first year of school, that this is really cool and I'm really happy about it.
Well, and it sounds like when you start talking non-negotiables, you really have to have a pretty good handle on who you are and what you're looking for. And is that, so you mentioned reindeer after your first, like, you didn't go into vet school thinking, when I get out of here, I'm going to hardcore just go after the first reindeer practice. That wasn't it, was it?
No, that wasn't it. But they had it listed in their job interview, and I was like, that's really cool. Like, I want to do that. I want to be a reindeer vet. So here I am now, a reindeer vet. So
that's so awesome. Well, and it's important. I mean, it's important for folks listening, and even, we're talking from a veterinary perspective, and there may be some folks in who are listening that are not veterinarians, but no matter what kind of transition you're going into, in order for you to be successful, you have to have a pretty decent understanding of what it's going to take to keep you in that space. And if you're working all those hours, but you can't pay your own rent or pay your student loan bills, or that adds a level of stress that's not healthy. And even working in the heat versus working in the snow, my guess is that for most veterinary students, that's going to change over those 4 years, and probably even change a little bit as they enter into practice. Have you, besides the reindeer thing, have you found some other non-negotiables since you've been out?
Yeah, so another one that I found to be really important, and I heard people mention it, as we were going through school, and I've come to realize how exactly important it is, and it's kind of your work schedule. how many hours a day are you required to work? And if you're working 10 to 12-hour days, which is what I do they give you a day off during the week? Because honestly, you can't get your normal everyday life stuff done. I can't go to a doctor's appointment. I can't go grocery shopping. I can't, a lot of things happen between the hours of 8 to 5 and I'm working those hours. So having a practice that gave me a day off has been really, really important. And then knowing that I was going into large animal, I knew I'd be taking emergency call. That's not always the same with small animal. But I'm so thankful that I joined a practice where there's never been any less than 3 doctors present, carrying that emergency load, just because that really helps with your work-life balance and making sure that you're not on call all the time, because it does drag down on you. You do need time to get away and to spend time on yourself, and to be able to focus on God as well, because that's really hard to do when your phone rings all the time. So that's something that I've found to be extremely important as I've been practicing.
Well, that's, we get kind of conditioned like that in vet school, where it's almost a 24/7 kind of a focus. It's really hard to maintain anything outside of school. And it is really easy for us to carry that over into our professional lives. And then burnout can come rather quickly. And so that's a pretty important factor. You may enjoy what you do, but also having that time away will also help you appreciate what you do and be able to be better at it when you come back to it. So in addition to non-negotiables, I think that, like, as someone is coming into this process, maybe writing out what their non-negotiables are there some other things that you would encourage people to do as they're looking at that first placement?
Yeah. So, and the work schedule was kind of my next one, which we kind of just touched on a little bit, but making sure that you have enough people to split, the workload, and that you're not going to be overwhelmed. I've heard of some people that end up at practices where it's an older vet and they hire a younger vet and they go off on vacation, and with that also comes mentorship. So being a new grad out, you can ask a practice if they mentor, but actually talking with the vets that are currently there, the younger vets that are there, to try and figure out what that actually looks like, it's really important. And it's going to look different for every person. I came out of school, I had done a whole bunch of externships. I had purposely done that because Raleigh didn't have the opportunity to do a lot of dairy palpation. I knew it was something I wanted to do. So I had worked hard on that. I had worked at an equine hospital for 6 years, undergraduate through vet school. So, I had a fair amount of hands-on experience going into it. So I didn't necessarily need as much mentorship as somebody else. But that we always need to be, as veterinarians, we need to be encouraging and changing what that looks like per person. Because, for our practice to thrive, it's important that every new vet that comes in is very comfortable with what they're doing, and that they don't, get sit out on their own until they're confident in themselves. And so that's something really important as a new grad to look at, just because it is something that's going to be different for each and every person.
And it would be important to think about this going in, that if you do feel like you have some limitations, it's okay to ask and to actually mention those things. I think most practices will be pretty upfront with you about it. If they know that you have comfort in certain areas, they may drive more of those things towards you, but also give you a little more mentorship in the things that you're struggling with. I think sometimes as vets, we think we have to be everything to everybody for all times, and then we end up getting trapped into situations that aren't good for us. So you've got this list of non-negotiables. You're making sure you're paying attention to work schedule, and that conversation with the practical aspect of talking to people within the clinic, and understanding what the work schedule and the workflow and workload, who's carrying what, and what kind of mentorship's available. Those are all good things. What else would you encourage somebody to look for, or at least to ask about for that first job?
Yeah. So, and this one came a little bit, some of it was within the work and some of it was outside of the work, but making sure that it's a community in which you can find that you have a place to belong. So as I was doing job interviews, the most important group of people to talk to are your technicians. Your technicians are the pulse of how happy is the workplace. How well do they get along How smoothly do things go? How long have people been there? Is it a workplace that retains people, or is it a workplace that rotates through people about every 1 to 3 years? Because that gives you a very good idea of, is this a community that's going to be encouraging and a place where I can join and stay put? Are they going to help to nurture that? And then also from the community side of things, as I was looking for a place to work, I paid attention also to the churches that were in the area. Because and you don't know until you go and you visit individual churches and you try them out. But I knew, a town that had one church versus a town that had multiple churches, I might have a little bit better opportunity of really finding a place to belong. Some of my spiritual gifts are playing music at church. And so I wanted to make sure that I could find a church that gave me the opportunity to put those spiritual gifts to work. And I have found that up here, which has been really neat. And it's a way for me to give back and to do something that's not veterinary related. And it's something that I really enjoy. So, and then, I mean, if there's different things that you enjoy, are you, a sports person? Do you like Frisbee? Do you like football? Do you like soccer? So is it a community in which you can find, a group that does that, once a week or something like that? And a lot of times, a simple internet search or Facebook search can kind of reveal some of the different things that are in the area and, what might interest you. Some people are interested in agility, if they have dogs, then that's something that you can do. That was something I didn't realize I might have some interest in until after I moved up here, and my work schedule doesn't fit very well with that. So, hindsight being 2020, that would have been something that I could have worked on a little bit better, but it wasn't something I thought I'd be interested in until I got up here. So it's just, those are different things to look for.
Yeah, that the community, I mean, when you think about it, as a full-time practitioner, you're going to spend just a massive amount of time in and around that clinic. And so having the community within the clinic is very important. And just because, you can get a sense as you go into a place and as you talk to folks, it's okay that if you don't fit in, there's different cultures and there's different ways that different clinics conduct themselves. And if you don't fit in, like, it's good to know that in advance. And it's not necessarily right or wrong. It just would allow you to be a little bit more comfortable and at ease within that setting. But then also I appreciate what you said about the community, because for early on when I was working in an ER practice, I was doing a lot of weekends, a lot of Saturdays and Sundays. And the community that we lived in didn't have weekday services. And I didn't think about that. I just naturally assumed that there'd be a lot of Wednesday services. So we had to actually we had to drive a ways in order to find something during the week. And so being aware of, combining your work schedule, the things that you like, the ways that you might relax, and trying to fit all that together, it's well worth paying attention to those things. It seems like there's an awful lot of things to factor in there. Is it? I'd imagine that there's probably more for someone to look at than even that. So I appreciate you sharing these things. Is there something else? What else would you add to that list of things to check?
Yeah. So, and as you get ready to do a job interview, and it's really important. I mean, each school allows different amounts of time for you to be able to do stuff. Being large animal, it was helpful being tracked that way because I had externships, so I could, make a job interview an externship, which made this part a little bit easier. But try to spend minimum of 2 days, at least 3 days at a clinic for a job interview. Anybody can hide crazy for 24 hours, whether that's the employer or whether that's the employee. And our clinic personally will not hire somebody if we've not gotten at least 48 hours with them. Because there's a lot more that you can tell. And there's so many different things we see in our day, so seeing how the vets interact with different cases, whether it's easy, whether it's emergent, whether, is there a conflict that rises? How do they deal with that? And then for them to also see how you deal with conflict and how you deal with pressure and, how do you interact with their staff and this and that. So setting aside enough time for job interviews, and don't just go spend, a half day on a Saturday with a practice, because they can hide anything for that short period of time as well as you can. And so you're going to get a much better idea of who you're going to be working with, which is hopefully going to be for a very long time after you graduate. And so take the time to make sure that you've kind of gotten to know them before you say yes to anything.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. Being able to, I like that anybody can hide crazy for a short period of time. It's pretty good. There's when you get a chance to observe, what are the kinds of things that you're really honing in on those visits, both as a someone coming in looking for a job, but then also someone from a clinic perspective who's watching, a prospective hire. What are the things that you're looking for?
Yeah, so as a student coming in, the biggest thing was I was looking for how the staff and the veterinarians interacted. And the biggest thing is, do the veterinarians help each other? If one person gets backed up doing something, does somebody else jump in and say, hey, let me pick up a room for you so you don't get behind, kind of seeing that cooperative environment. And also seeing how they treated their techs. Because those techs are just as important as every veterinarian that's in that building. And so seeing, how well did that team get together and do very well. And if one vet's willing to help another, they're more likely to be willing to help you as a new grad and mentor you and help you along. Now as an employer, I'm looking to see how a veterinary student interacts with my staff. We've worked very hard to build a good environment of where we work. And I want to make sure that whoever comes in is going to be, going to fit in well with that. And not cause any drama, not cause any trouble. For me, it's not as much about what they know, but are they willing to learn? And are they willing to work well with my staff? Those are, to me, the two most important things. I mean, we're going to ask you, to look through blood work and look at x-rays and, in our instances, palpate a cow and, physical exam a colic horse, and all those types of things. But there's a lot of things that we can learn or that we can teach very easily. But I want for that veterinary student to be someone who's teachable. And that's really important to me.
And that's good to know too, because as you're going into a position like that, it's okay for you to ask questions. And someone who kind of conveys this attitude that I already know everything and I already know what to do and how to do it, that may give off kind of the wrong impression, even though you're trying to make a good impression. It may actually be making the wrong impression, and that's important. And we can't say this. I'll say this 1,000 times if we say it once. Love your veterinary technicians. That's gonna the front office staff and your back office staff are going to either make you or break you. They will make you look wonderful or they will destroy you. And you need to show them some love and some kindness every step of the way. Yeah, for sure. What else would you add on this list of things as people are making this transition into the workforce?
Yeah. So, and this one kind of fell within my non-negotiables, but we'll talk a little bit more about it because it's really important for me. And that was the opportunity to do missions.
Yeah.
And, for some people, they don't, it may not be your passion to go somewhere and to serve, but also finding ways to serve within the community. Veterinary practices are at such a kind of unique crossroads between people and animals, and people come to you very vulnerable with their animals. And so finding ways to give back to the community, because whether you like it or not, you are kind of a very integral part of that community. And so, your job doesn't need to be like being a veterinarian does not just need to be a job. For me, mission trips has helped for me to see that more than just a way to make money. But it's a way for me to spread the gospel. And it's a way for me to use the gifts that God has given me. And then going on these trips also continuously helps to put me into perspective, because so easy it is to look at the animal and say, this person should have brought you in sooner, or this person should have treated it better, or should have done this. But when you've got the perspective of, not everybody has the resources and the knowledge available to them that we do, there's a lot of things that are going on that, you need to ask those questions and not be as judgmental. I know sitting down and talking with clients, there's been many a time where, you've got a dog in kidney failure that's been vomiting for 3 weeks, and you're like, why didn't they bring it in sooner? And, and you just sit down and you talk with the person and come to find out, their dad's been in the hospital with a heart attack for a
Mhm.
month, or and there's so much more that's going on. And as much as we love the animal, the person that's attached to it is so much more important, because that person has an eternal soul, and you potentially could have eternal impact on them. So but being able to do missions allows me to, it just helps to continually remind me how important that is. And that this isn't just a job, but it's a gift that God has given me, and it's a gift that I can use to further his kingdom. And so I looked for a practice that would allow me to take vacation to do missions. And I told you, I thought it would end up being a Christian veterinary practice. And I'll tell you, I had a Christian veterinary practice that I interviewed at. And as soon as I started to ask time off for missions, they backpedaled very quickly. They didn't want to give me the time to do it. And that to me, that was very telling. And I was like, okay, this isn't where God wants me to be. And I had some of, like, on my my resume, I had things of like mission trips with church, my involvement with Christian Veterinary Mission, and the advisor at NC State that kind of would help fourth years going out and submitting the resumes and all that. She says, you don't want that on there. She says, people may not like you because that's on there. And I said, if they don't like me because that's on there, I'm not going to like working for them. Like, it's not somebody that I want to work for. Like, whether or not they're Christian or not, if they're okay with this and will let me do it, then we're probably going to get along pretty well, because this is something that's very, very important to me. So, and that honestly probably has been the absolutely most important thing for me. And it was interesting because he didn't quite give me the time like I thought he would. He kind of kept my vacation the same, but because we work days off, I have the opportunity to work an extra day here and there to pick up extra vacation time. And so my first year out of practice, I worked 3 weeks of missions and I made it home for Christmas. So, so it ended up working out better than any way that I could have ever anticipated, versus going to a place that just gave me a set amount of time out. So it's just neat to look back and see how God was working and what God did. But I think that honestly is probably my most important thing to look for. And you need to decide what type of service that looks like to you. I mean, if that's just, doing something locally or with the local church, that's okay too. But just make sure that you can set aside time to do that.
Well, it's good to remember. I mean, again, as being coming in new to the workforce, we sometimes think that we kind of have to beg people to want us, and it's okay to be yourself, and it's okay to let your heart kind of be seen a little bit. And these are things that are important to me, because otherwise you're just going to find yourself in a situation that may be problematic down the road. And it is better to, in the beginning, again, it's not right or wrong. If you don't fit in with a particular team, it's okay. And that kind of goes all the way back to the very beginning of what you said, when you said you need to start that process with prayer, because if you don't start that process with prayer, you can find yourself in a really sticky situation. Well, I appreciate all of this advice that you've been given to us. If you had to, there's some great examples of things that folks, as they're entering into the workforce or making this transition, might want to consider as they're doing this. Do you have some final words of advice on how to approach this process, and maybe how to be successful through the whole thing?
Yeah. So, and right now, currently with the job environment, remember, people, vet clinics probably want more of you than there are available. So be true to yourself, make sure they know who you are. Because if you try to hide something, then it may not work out later on. And find the things that are really important to you, whether that's location or distance from home, or, different species you get to work with, or do you take call, do you not take call? Those are all really, really important things to you. And those are things that are going to make you enjoy your job very much. You've put all this work into it, and God's giving you this gift. And, I want for you to be able to enjoy it as you go out into the workforce. I don't want for you to dread going to work every day, because I love going to work every day. I love my job and I love what I do. And so just, as you're looking for a workforce, just make sure it's somebody that treats their people well, and that allows you to work and to serve as God has allowed you to, and be thankful for that.
from the very beginning, you can hear it, right? You love what you do. And that in and of itself is a gift and a blessing from God. And for most of the folks that are listening here, whether you're a new veterinarian coming into the profession, hopefully you are blessed in exactly the same way. And there might be some folks that are listening that are part of our profession that maybe have been struggling to find that place of enjoyment and love again. And part of that may be that we've drifted a little bit, and maybe some of those non-negotiables we've begun to negotiate on, and maybe we need to, maybe you're not going into the workforce, maybe you've been there for a long time, but maybe it's time to reevaluate some of those non-negotiables and get back to that place where God is blessing you in your profession. I think that as we go to him, as we pray about this, as we lay our profession before him and offer it up as an act of worship, it's in those moments that we are learning how to live well at the intersection of two roads crossing.
Thank you for listening to Two Roads Crossing, a podcast production of the Christian Veterinary Mission. If you are blessed by this content, like and subscribe so that you are alerted when new content is released. If you would like more information about CVM, or if you have questions, comments, or topical suggestions, you can find us online at www.cvm.org. Or you can contact us by emailing podcast@cvm.org. God has a plan for the nations, and that plan includes you. We pray that CVM has encouraged you to live out your calling with confidence and competence. So, until next time, may the voice of the shepherd ring loud and clear as you follow him in faith to the intersection of two roads crossing.